All right, well, thanks for coming through the bad weather. I know one person's going to miss tonight because of an emergency. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things that I was talking about on Tuesday. I was talking about certifications, the way you should be thinking about it, and I had forgotten that there is a certification you can get now, immediately, this semester, if you want to. And we have a student CSI group, Construction Specifications Institute group. In addition to student constructors, and they have training sessions starting in February in this room. It would be, I guess, Mondays and Wednesdays, the nights we're not in here, from 5:30 to 7:30. And there is a cost, but it's minimal. And anyway, if you're interested in that certification, which is going to look dynamite if you get it on your resume, you would take an exam in late April, I think, up in Jackson. And don't think that it's an architecture thing. It's all about design, engineering, and construction. And it may be that we require students to, eventually we're going to require students to take an exam, whether it's this one, CDT stands for Construction Documents Technician. And you learn about pretty much the whole industry, but the documents they're talking about are the AIA documents, subcontract agreements and things like that. It's dynamite. It's something that you would like to do. And for the online people, it's possible that we could stream those training sessions. I don't have an okay on that yet. There may be some copyright issues with filming the slides. I don't know. But I'm going to try to see if we can do that, because I know some of the online students can do it. It's just one night a week, Friday evening, 5:30 to 7:30, in this room, starting in February 6th, I believe. It's the first Friday in February. And tell you what, it's dynamite stuff. So I wanted to mention that, kind of follow up on certifications, and then I got an email today. I cut and pasted it, made a PDF about it. This is another professional organization called CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association. It's not one that probably some of you will join unless you're in the kind of the accounting functional area of the business. But what I wanted to show you was, this is just a mass email they put out. I used to be a member. I let my membership expire because there's only so many I can afford. They cost about $100 to $150 a year, just to be a member, and those can add up. Three, 4, or 5 associations. But this is the CFMA, and they're advertising in this email 2 basically courses. What do they call it? This is a 2-day course, and this is a 4-day course. One is the basics of construction accounting, and then risk management for CFOs and controllers. What's a controller? Never heard that term? It's kind of a highfalutin bookkeeper. Would be in the accounting business function of the company. So anyway, they have these courses, and what I wanted to show you was I don't know exactly what a CPE credit is, but it counts towards their certification. So if you take the 4-day one, you get 8 CPE credits. If you take the 2-day, you get 4. I guess that makes sense. A lot of times they're just called CEUs, continuing education units. So I would imagine different certifications are set up on different continuing education credits. And you can see that if you remember, for instance, on the 4-day one, it's $225. That's pretty cheap. And if you're not a member, it's $100 more. The expensive part is, in this case, I think this conference is in, they have them in conjunction with conferences a lot of times. I think this is Puerto Rico. 4 nights of room and board in Puerto Rico would be a lot more expensive than the course itself. I've put some new material into the show. Basically, in this week's folder under materials, I'm putting the lectures up. Obviously, we're videoing them. And this one, Tuesday's lecture, is streaming on YouTube. And I think we're going to switch that to a university video server. But anyway, we're going to be having those archived thanks to the video here. And then I'm also trying to capture, I forgot to turn it on, an MP3. So if you just want to listen to it, not watch a video, you can download the MP3, put it on your smart device or whatever you want to do. Thought this was going to be easy. One more time. Pause. Maybe this will work. We'll see. Either way, the MP3 that's up there, I stripped out of the video anyway. I was just hoping for an easier way to do it. What I want to talk about today is what I didn't get to Tuesday, and I think I'm just going to go to this slide. This is a new slide that's up there. It's called Business Plan Components. So you'll be responsible for the material in this. In other words, it's potential quiz material. My intention of giving it to you is to give you information and guidance on designing your construction company. So hopefully this will help. These slides are taken from what I used to do before I came here, and it fits perfect with what we're trying to do. And I said Tuesday that we're not a design build, we're not in a design build environment. We're design, bid, build, where the design is in theory 100% complete, and we're going to bid it, probably a competitive bid or negotiated, whatever. But we're not involved in the design. We're not part of a design team like would be design build. So as far as process, your planning work or bidding work, and then your building. And these boxes just represent very basic workflow process. Prospect means you've got to find work. If you find something that you want to submit a proposal on, then you estimate it. You mark it up with overhead and profit and submit it as a proposal. That's bidding. Totally separate function, totally separate process from estimating. And if you're successful if you're the low bidder or you negotiate the work successfully, then you implement or launch the project, and then you build it by planning, start up, construct, close it out, and it's just a circle, a loop, over and over and over. These are a different way of showing what the TCM is trying to show you with these diagrams. So if I go back to the TCM framework, let's say I go down to chapter 7 and go to cost estimating framework. This is another way of showing the same thing. It's just, these are very broad processes. So it's a lot of this is what you're going to be doing. You have to plan for what you're going to do in this class, which is estimating, budgeting, scheduling the job. You've got to plan for the plan that you're going to make. Really what we're doing in here is planning. We're not going to pretend that the project started and that you're doing project management and project controls. We're just going up to kind of a launch box and saying, do you have those skills, right? Because estimating and creating plans is just planning. It's not executing or implementing. But then you're going to quantify what it is I give you in these contract documents, right? So, if you get contract documents for Century 20 housing facilities, you've got to break that into small parts so that you can get your mind around it and figure out how much it costs. You can just look at it and go, oh, I think I'll bid this much on it. Right? So you've got to break it down, decompose it, takeoff means quantity takeoff. I hope you know that. You've got to apply cost to the breakdown, price it, you can kind of see, but that's really the same thing, a little different, but that's in essence what we're trying to show you. Make sense? So that's kind of the life cycle process that we're involved in. And then I talked also Tuesday about functional areas of the business. And I said these are pretty close. There might be one more, and that's information technology. So all of these functional areas of a company have to do all the things inside that circle, all those processes. And again, if you're one person, you're doing all those things. If you have 20 people in your organization, then good, you have some help. You can put some people in those functional areas depending on what their background and skills are, their competencies. Be probably pretty rare if you've got an accountant that has a construction engineering technology degree. They're probably coming from the business college, although here I go off on a tangent, but I've gotten rid of a couple, in my career, I've gotten rid of a couple of CPAs. I mean, they had a professional license for accounting. I'm sure they were probably at the top of their class in business school, but construction accounting is so different course, debits and credits. Where do you put them? And how do you pull out this, that, the other? But accounting is very specific, so it's hard to find good accounting people. Again, that's why an organization like CFMA is really valuable, because you can take those business people and start sending them to CFMA courses, plus their experience within your company, and you can start getting them tuned to what we do. Our business is not like manufacturing, where it's a lot different. And take you down, work real good. Like this. And then there has to be information exchange between all the functional areas of your company. You're not going to have to deal with a lot of that. Again, we're just planning. But if you ever want to have your own company, or watch how it works with the company that you go to work for, companies that are really good exchange this information between those functional areas really well. And the ones that don't, it costs them on their projects, and it adds overhead. I work for a company that was located in a very rural area one time, and they didn't want to spend the money or take the time to learn how to exchange information like this. And since they were out in a rural area, they were like the largest employer in a big radius area. And they could afford to just hire divorced mothers and make their lives really miserable by tin keying in data from paper and that kind of thing. They could get by with it. So what I'm going to talk about now is how are you going to design or create your theoretical construction company. I'm not going to make you do this, but in the real world, this is some of the stuff that I did. There's really three components to planning a business, whether it exists or it's brand new. There's three components that we'll talk about tonight. And one of them is just called a business model. All right? And it has different names. People might call it strategic planning. But we used to go into companies and say, they'd say, well, we need some help with our company. We're having troubles. Usually people would call that recognized they were in trouble. Big companies, small companies. And then some companies just wanted to see what we could do because they were on the cutting edge and always wanted to be on the cutting edge. What we would do is get all the executives of the company and start having meetings and flushing out, what do you want your company to be about? Who are you? You can read this. It says an objective evaluation of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the company relative to its mission and attendant models. Well, that means you have to have an identity, a mission statement. What are your values? And this sounds like any kumbaya stuff to you, but you can't do the rest of what I'm going to show you unless you get through the assessment, the foundation, and the issues. And that took the longest and was the hardest of everything that I did when I was doing this. And this consultancy per company would probably last a year or a year and a half. So, we'd go out and have a meeting for a couple of days. That's about all the executives could muster to be away from their everyday business. And they would have to flush things out for a month or two. And then we'd come back and we'd really pound on this stuff. It was tough, but worthwhile. And once you get through all that, then you say, all right, well, what needs to be done? Well, we want to grow from 20 million a year to 40 million a year in a year, or in 2 years. All right, well, That's an objective. And if you try to do something like that without going through this process, you're going to probably fail. It happened to me before I was a consultant. I worked like the company I was telling you that was rural. We went from, we like doubled our volume every year for 2 years. And if you have a plan for that, this kind of plan, it's chaos. It's just chaos. And in fact, in that situation, the owner got that big and realized that he could not be the owner of that size of the company because he wanted to micromanage things. And when you scale that big, that fast, you've got to trust other people and spit down. So anyway, you set up your objectives, you strategize how to complete those objectives, you turn those into action plans. And we're talking about to a level of detail that when every person in the company walks in the door in the morning, if you're not doing something that's in this plan, then you're not doing your job. And that's how detailed I'm talking about getting. Obviously, the action plans are turned into tasks. So the estimators will be doing this, and this. The accountants will be doing this, and this, and the PMs, and so on. And the three components that I'm talking about, one of them is that business model, right, where you go through that self-assessment and that strategization. And to do that, you use things like these workflow process diagrams that I'm talking about, like this one, for instance. These are very high level. Each one of these boxes, let's say, quantify the scope content. Well, what all is involved in that, and who all is involved in that, and what business functions are involved in that. So you could break this square down right here down into lots of sub-processes. Okay? I mean, think about the steps that it takes to take off a job. You can diagram that with workflow process. Very detailed. You know, I'm not going to ask you to go to this level of detail, but I'm trying to give you background since we're going to do part of it, that you kind of get the full plate. Does anyone know if there's software that does this kind of diagramming for you? There is. Does anyone know what it is? Visio. Visio, V-I-S-I-O. Microsoft product. It's actually a part of Microsoft Office. It doesn't come with the bundles if you buy a computer and it's got Windows on it, and it comes with Microsoft Office. There's different levels of Microsoft Office. And it's sold separately. And it's not user-friendly, but it's very powerful. And you just drag these boxes and you drag the arrows, and there's a whole standard for this kind of diagramming. There's several standards. So there's rules. This stuff is all laid out, it's standardized, specified. But typically there's an input and an output, there's a controlling mechanism and things like that for each box. But the software allows you to make the boxes and the diagrams real quickly, but it also has a database behind it. So if this was Visio, I could go to this box, right mouse click it, and I could put in, all right, what functional area of the company does it belong to? What functional role? I haven't talked about those yet, but those are functional roles. So for instance, a functional role would be a quantity surveyor or a junior estimator. And we would embed each box with what functional area does it belong to, who's supposed to do it. And once we had everything diagrammed, once we had all those attachments made, then you can spit out a report. Right? So you can filter and sort databases, right? So you can say, show me all the tasks that the estimating functional area does. Boom, 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 that's the whole thing. Or you could flip it. You could say, show me all the tasks that a junior estimator does. Boom, 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 boom. So what do you have if you have all the tasks that a junior estimator does? Got a job description. Okay. So doing this stuff helps you produce things that are equally important. I'm not going to make you do them here, but job descriptions are paramount. A lot of construction companies don't have them. But how do you know you're doing your job if you don't have a job description? And if your employer leaves it wide open, he can tell you you're doing a bad job anytime he wants, or she wants, right? Job descriptions are hugely important, often overlooked in this business. And by the way, when the new director came here, the very first thing he did, he asked every faculty in the school, send me your job description. First thing he did. He right then and there. See what was going on. So then if you have a diagram that shows what needs to be done by what people in what department or what functional area, then what do you have? You've got job descriptions, one output of the database. It's policies and procedures. This is how we do quantity takeoff. Boom, here's who does it, here's how it's done, these are the steps, boom. And most construction companies also don't want to invest the time, effort, cost into developing the policies and procedures manual. Not that, you should be doing everything by the book, but, when you get new employees or whatever, you'll see it's pretty handy to have. You'll probably see, hopefully you'll see, because the company's done this, that you got to work for them. More than likely, you've got to work for a company that doesn't have these things, and you'll be going, I see what Hannah was talking about now. So the business model is the written document and the workflow diagrams, all the tasks that have to be done to make your company work. That's one component. The second component is called the organizational model, and that's who's going to do these things. And it depends on how big you want your company to be, how many jobs you want to do in a year, that kind of thing. So I'm going to show you functional role chart in a minute. And then the third component is a financial model. So we would go to a company that said we want to double our volume. We want to double our volume each of the next 2 years. We would say, well, okay, in order for you to do that, how much work are you going to have to get under contract, whether it's hard bid, which means competitive bidding, or negotiating, or however it is that you get work. How much work are you going to have under contract to double your revenue and pay your bills and make a profit and pay all your people? Sounds simple, but it's not. How would you go about doing that? How would you help some company plan to double their volume, say, in 1 year? How would you go about it? Good answer. But how would we figure out how much dollars? He said go into their accounting system and find out what they did last year. Bingo. What's done historically, we would go in and we would extract all that data and say, okay, over the last 3 years, this is how many projects you did per year. Right? And this is how much money after you pay overheads and direct costs, this is what you have left over. And some companies don't even know that. They don't know the dividing line between their overhead and their profit. They just know, I've got so much cash in the bank. They don't know how much they're going to have to spend in 1, 2, 3, 4 months. And then you have to divide it up. Lots of companies do different types of work. So kind of the type of work that I was involved in was heavy civil work. So there could be paving jobs, there could be concrete paving jobs, asphalt paving jobs, there could be only earthwork jobs, there could be pipeline jobs, there could be bridge jobs. So we would say, all right, let's take it by segment. And one company say you need to quit bidding jobs in the bridge segment because you lose money every time you're doing it. Why are you bidding bridge jobs? And another company, we found out if they bid less work, they would make more money. But if you have a historical perspective, you can use that to project what they're going to need to do going forward. And that's what we would do with these financial models. And this thing they call standard of success, once the whole thing's done, you've gone through this whole process of strategically planning out to minute detail what your company's going to do in a year, 2 years, 3 years. I think we typically did 3-year projections. Then you've got to share this and get the buy-in of the people who work in your company. But you don't want to let them see proprietary sensitive information, which is number one, really not any of their business, and number two, would probably be misinterpreted anyway. So what you've got to do is boil down your plan into what we call SOS, standards of success. And so for instance, we would say, okay, estimators, based upon the plan that everyone's bought into, you have to bid so much work in a month. And you have to get under contract so much work in a month. And that's something everybody can keep track of. You're not giving them the internal secrets of your whole plan. Right? So that's what we did. And I think thinking about this is probably going to blow your mind tonight with too much information, but we'll come back and visit it, and it should give you some idea of some better ideas of how to come up with this hypothetical construction company versus if you had to see. That's all. I'm not asking you to be long-term business planners. It's really not what this is about. But we've got to do this first before we can do the other stuff. Again, this is part of the business model. This might be an example of some detailed tasks that are required in the prospect stage of the cycle. We're breaking down things to a pretty small level. Not to the level of, okay, you've got 15 minutes to go to the bathroom. That's too detailed. But not just a little bit up from that. I mean, if you were to record what you do, like today, that level. What did you do today? Well, I went to class. All right, that's a task. I read some chapters. That's a task. That level. That makes any sense. This is just output. This would be output from the Visio thing, spitting out by task information. And again, you can get job descriptions out of this, policies and procedures, framework, that kind of thing. So, how do they work together? Well, how does the business model work with the organizational model? Excuse me. Well, it should be obvious. You've got to know what there is to do, right? And then you've got to know what functional roles need to do it. Now, I'm not talking about an organization chart yet. I'm saying, if I've got to estimate and bid $20 million of work per month, which could be a lot to some companies, which could be not very much at all. What functional roles and how how many are going to be required to do that? Well, you need a quantity surveyor. You probably need, a supervisor for that quantity surveyor. So there's two functional roles with no one's name on it yet. Right? Those are two functional roles to do quantity pickup. If you only have 4 people in your company, one person could do both of them. So he's got two functional roles in his job description. Right? Does that make sense? This is an example of what the database would print out. So we have a functional role called an estimating manager. And these are the list of the tasks that functional role is responsible for. If you want to, we went ahead for some folks and put in what are the qualifications for that functional role. And that helps you a lot when you're trying to hire people into your company. Again, this is not something I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to design a company, but not to this level. The main thing I want to get across to you are those 3 components. You're going to do a little bit of thought on the business model, not a lot. You're going to do a lot on the organizational model, and some on the financial model. In the end, when you get it flushed out, you got your functional role chart, then you figure out, all right, these are the people that I'm going to have work in my company. If there's only 4 of you, you're going to have to divvy up all the functional roles, give yourself a title, and that's called an organization. See the difference? So in this example, whoever this is on the top, it says estimating department head. He's the estimating manager, the business development director, and the contract administrator. He has all those functional roles. He's probably got a pretty good list of responsible tasks. But mainly, what's the difference between an org chart and a role chart? So before you guys give me an org chart, I want you to have thought through what roles it's going to take to do whatever your company's going to do. Obviously, it's going to build commercial buildings. But are you going to build one a year? Are you going to pretend you're a great big company? We do 25 jobs a year this size. Or are you just one small, lean company that does 3 or 4 jobs a year? Nothing wrong with being small. It's all about what coin do you put in the bank at the end, right? Big is not always better. And again, you've got access to these slides, but it's just a diagram trying to tie it all together. These 2 components together. Questions on that? Make sense? Or is it confusing? Don't brain dead tonight? It's late in the week.
Do they go in that order? You have to have it in that order. I know you have to have a
There's not an order. The only order is the business model comes first. You got to figure out who you are, what your. There's so many variables that play on a construction company that it constantly changes, and those variables are internal. What would internal forces be that could affect a construction company?
People retire.
What's that?
People retire.
People retire. I experienced one. I worked for a company that was about 30 years old, started by an entrepreneur. He wanted to give the business to his son, which is not a company. So there was a daughter also. So she became the one that they were trying to groom for the succession of the company. And she didn't get along with Dad like the son did. And it was so bad that the company ended up failing. So, you know, that's things that can change internally. External is a whole different deal. What are external forces that could affect your business plan? Economy. I mean, think if you're in oil and gas construction. 6 months ago to now, not today. What if you did this process in 2008, right? And then you wake up and it's 2009, and you know the economy's crashed almost to the level of the Great Depression. Different ballgame. So you've got to evaluate all that stuff. You've got to recognize it, and you've got to build it into your plan. This is a screenshot of financial model just done in a worksheet. Looks like it's 3 years. These are projections. Again, this is planning. And I've written some stuff in here that kind of links this to financial statements. What's the difference between the two? Financial statements are historical. This is planning. So don't let me confuse you there. This is average job size, jobs per year, annual revenue. And over here it's broken up by segment. Public works, private development, environmental remediation. I can't read it all. My eyesight's bad, but you'll be able to read it. Look at the slides. All right, so the financial model is based on the plan that you come up with. The action plan, the objectives you want your company to do. And these are standard of success measures that I was talking about a minute ago. You boil them down into things like these are things you can share with the rest of the people in the company and not let them peek into any inner workings of what the executives are into. Things like revenue per employee, profit margins, revenue per estimator, bid lead. What's bid lead? We also did that. We would go in and we're talking about going into the accounting system. I told you we'd go in there and extract a lot of that information. We also went into all their past estimates. And some of these places had 3 or 4 estimates. And we would look at the history of each estimate. And can you value an estimator by how much work they get? Why not? How close were they to what actually happened? Right? But you can, if the estimating manager, sometimes he is a executive. A lot of times there'll be a title called chief estimator, and that person is actually an executive of the company. And he has the power to add the markup amounts because, in theory, he needs to know the market and what the chances of that bid winning are in a particular market against particular competition. And bid lead is how much money you leave in between your low bid and the next lowest bid. How much do you want that bid lead to be? $1. I would say a penny. Maybe a penny's too short because rounding, probably 3 rounds. $1 sounds good to me. And we would look at how much, we would look at all that stuff and put it out there for everyone to look at.
How would you know how close to get them as far as being the estimator? Okay, I know this company's going to bid this much or whatever.
I'm not sure the question.
You're talking about leaving money on the table.
Yes.
say you're the low bid, how do you know that you're getting close to that other bid before going in the bid meeting?
Well, you never know.
That's one of their signs.
You never know, but one reason that we encourage you all to take statistics is you can run a statistical analysis. And I can show you models on how to do that. But you can run statistical analysis if you have the data. You need to have the data on your competitors. It needs to be the same types of projects, that kind of thing. And you can use the statistics. It's kind of like, it's no different than the bookies in Vegas doing over-under on a football and basketball game, or spread. That's what they do. It's about the same thing. So you can increase your odds, but you're never going to know. And the more bidders there are, the tougher it is, because it just takes one uneducated contractor to wreck the whole thing. So if you're bidding with 15 other bidders, and there's one estimator or one company in the crowd that really doesn't know good estimating principles, they don't know what their costs are, they might not even put an estimate together. They're just working on price. Let's put a bunch of prices together. You've got a bid, right? Doesn't mean you know what your cost is. And they can wreck the whole thing. I mean, I've worked for weeks on bids, and some yahoo comes in with a number that's below my cost. Well, I know they don't know what they're doing. There's no way you can pay your people $1 an hour in people. There's no way you can not pay yourself for the equipment that you're using. A lot of times it's there. Contractors won't recover their equipment costs. And the kind of business that I was in had very high equipment costs and estimates. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, again, that's part of the financial model. And I'll let you look at this. These are just diagrams on, we were trying to show people, try to sell them on this planning process and system that we provided. And we did it in a series of workshops, and this was kind of a promotional thing. But, you know, the main thing to show you on here were the different components, the three main components. This is all part of LTBP, long-term business planning, or strategic business planning. And I've already told you that you know, these are what the models spit out. If you go up to, if I were to, I've got a database of, it's about 6 or 7 years old, so it's not accurate anymore, but I had a student go onto the AGC, the Association of General Contractors of America website that has like 10,000 members. I had them extract all the email addresses off of there, and I emailed them all a survey back then. If I was to do that now, and it was a one-question survey, does your company use strategic business planning? I bet 90% of them would say yes. But like I told you Tuesday, most of them don't know how laborious and how detailed it needs to be. They got together for a couple of days 2 years ago, and that's their plan. And they probably don't ever look at it. This stuff is something you need to revisit. The business management executives, business management functional area, whoever's performing the functional roles of executives, they need to look at this quarter and revamp it, just for the reasons we were talking about. Things can change so quickly, and pays off dividends. But if I were to start asking more specific questions in a survey like that, all the AGC members, then you can start finding out a lot of it's superficial. Makes sense? If I started asking deep questions about this, do you know your revenue per employee? Do you know by work type what your revenue is? Is your revenue separated from your, when you say revenue, I'm talking about not overhead and profit together, just profit. Questions on that? These are functional roles. You can blow this up on your screen, pull it down, but it's color coded by functional area. And I'm not saying that this is all inclusive. This was really for, in fact it's not, because this is for companies that build different types of projects that your make-believe company is going to build. We weren't building commercial buildings. It's going to change something. I'm just trying to give you the concept. I do want you to think about how big are we? How many jobs a year are we? How many people are in the company? It'd be pretty easy to just figure there's 4 executives, 4 people on a team or the executives, and dole functional roles up that way. But you're free to do whatever you want as long as it makes sense. A little bit of logic involved. And what I have here is some of these roles will be corporate specific and some will be project specific. Right? So if you're a project manager, are you going to be in the office, the home office, every day? Probably very little. So remember, you've got home office functional roles, and you've got project implementation functional roles. Right? You got to figure, how's my company going to do this? And I showed this to the competition team. Go to this link that says PM, takes you to this. This is like an online text from some guy at Carnegie Mellon University. I think it's been up there quite some time. I'm glad it's still up. Because it talks a little bit about those things. I think my stuff's better, but what I do like is this diagram right here. This is why I put the link up. And I'm going to need you to define to me whether your company is a matrix organization or a project-oriented organization. What's the difference between the two? Can you tell by this diagram? Can you help everyone understand it? Yeah.
Okay. On your project oriented, you got a project manager at each project. Anybody that's project oriented, they're going to be on that, and then working on that one project. In the matrix, everybody's working on every project. You got like one project manager, one superintendent, one safety guy, and they're all working on each project.
Yes. Another way I would say it, using the terms that I've been using tonight, is projects share the functional areas on the top. That's a matrix organization. business functions, right? Business management, accounting, estimating, construction, equipment management, engineering, probably like one out. In a matrix organization, those functional areas are shared by all projects. In a project-oriented organization, business management's always by itself. They're typically not associated with projects. And the accounting function's probably in here, but all the other business functions are specific to each job. See the difference? So I need you to know that distinction, and I need you to define when you design your company. I want you to tell me we're a matrix organization or we're a project-centric organization. Yeah.
In the project organization, you have like project manager, safety manager, that for each project.
Yeah, these are project 1, project 2, project 3, and this will probably have the PM functional areas unique. It's going to have a lot of staff. It's going to have its own construction function, its own engineering function. We're talking full time.
It's probably a larger company as a project lead.
Great question. Here's what I think. I think it's not so big as how big is the company, but how big are the jobs that you're working on. Because if you're building $1, $2 million jobs, you're not going to be able to staff it like this. Now, I think the size jobs that we're going to be looking at is between 10 and 15 million. That's about the job size I've been giving you. You can put some staff on it. So you still kind of have an option.
So the ones that we're bidding on for our company, you already know what the winning bid was, and you're trying to see if you can get closest to that, or you're just seeing if we know the information to be able to derive that.
I'm not going to grade you on how close you get. Yes, I'm going to know what it's worth. What I care more about is you can make some wrong assumptions, be way off on your estimate. I just want to see what your estimated skills are. If you make a wrong assumption and it makes your price or your costs go up and down, that's not that big of a deal to me. I want to call out, hey, you make this assumption and think about it. But I just want to see that you know how to do quantum takeoff, you know how to do good sound estimating. Same with the schedule. That's the main thing. Yeah.
What's the advantage of the matrix organization? Is there an advantage?
Well, anyone want to take a shot at that?
Lower overhead.
Lower overhead for one. Well, we're talking home office overhead, right? So on the matrix organization, it says top management, functional division A, functional division B, functional division C. That's all home office overhead. But here, what are the, is this home office overhead? This is the only home office overhead. So maybe if you're doing jobs big enough, you have very low home office overhead, you've got more job overhead or project overhead. So I'm not sure how to answer your question. It depends.
You have to have time to communicate in a matrix organization.
Most companies are at the top.
They are.
Until you get into $100 million jobs. You go oil and gas, that kind of thing. Oil and gas is pretty much this. But, you know, that's probably not true. Y'all know where Bassfield is? You know the construction company out there? You guys? They're out in the middle of nowhere. They're all graduates of USN. That company does $100 million jobs. They have a nice, modest office out there in Bassfield. I think they're a matrix organization. So I don't know all the answers. When you start trying to make real hard rules, you get into trouble. I mean, if I were to secretly survey you all and say, true or false, The main mission of construction companies is to make a profit. I bet 100% or 90% would say yes. But I'd be accurate. And I can tell you out of experience that's not true. I did this business planning work with a company in Indiana, and his mission was to keep his people employed. And they made plenty of profit. Nobody was poor. So a lot of those things you learn in business school or we learn in business school are myths. Doesn't mean they're not good general rules of thumb. Yeah.
Couldn't you have both? If your company's large enough, you could have a project manager, project superintendent, but then you could also have like an area superintendent do different.
You could have a maintenance organization and one big project. Sure. Good point. That's a good point. I think I told you Tuesday that I had a billionaire call me and he said, I've got this money and I want you to be the first employee. I didn't know these things at that point, like I know them now. So, you know, youth is always wasted on the young. But I was savvy enough to say, hey, look, why don't we just get 3 or 4, get a good superintendent, get me as an estimator, get a project manager, 3 key good people. Why don't we just do, you know, 1 or 2 projects a year? Bang. No, he wanted to do a maintenance. And a couple of years later, I said, yeah, I wish we would have done that. When I was in grad school in the 90s, did some project for a class, but my idea was to create a virtual construction corporation. It would have to be, and my idea was this: find someone who wants to invest in a project asset. Okay. I'm talking like $100, $200 million job. Form a company. Use that investor's assets for bonding. Hire 3 or 4 good people, build the job in 1 to 3 years. Bank the revenue, dissolve the company. Why not? They almost do that with joint ventures. Almost that. But typically, organizations involved in joint ventures leave the joint venture and they go off and they're one of these things. I was just like, create a virtual corporation for 1 project. What would be the problem with it?
No history.
No history. A lot of times, you have to be pre-qualified by an owner with historical accomplishment work. And my argument in the class was, well, people's experience, the employee's experience should be pre-qualified.
Well, a lot of those.
So much for my perfect world.
Company safety, see how safe the company was?
Yeah.
So basically, I said.
Yeah, safety person would be one you have to have too, a really good one. Because your bonding company and your insurance company would be really scary. What's that?
So basically, they're saying you wouldn't have any merit to take on that job.
Well, there's some work you can get. But, you know, if you want to do public work, typically, the Corps of Engineers or some Department of Transportation or the Government Services Administration, I think they're all set up with, you got to be pre-qualified. You can pick up a set of big dollars. I wouldn't want to go tell some clerk, hey, we're a virtual corporation. We're really good. Please give me some drawings. No. All right, so when you're looking at these functional roles, keep in mind what's specific to the home office, what would be specific to project. And I've just given some examples here. They're just for purposes of you to get started. I mean, you can use them, but they're not for commercial construction per se. And I don't have IT in here. I need to update these. And you know, there's the whole thing, color-coded by functional area. You can do that if you would like. But you assign those functional roles to a job position, put a person's name in there, give them a title, and that's an organization chart. So organizational charts would be a lot cleaner looking than a functional role chart, right? You don't put your quantity surveyor on an org chart. You can. Definitely don't put field people on. So those are the slides that I have up there. Let's see what else is sitting up there, and then we'll call it a night. I want you to look at some of the stuff in here, because when you form a team, I want you to do a responsibility. The homework is going to be reading a recommended practice, which is, now we're talking about your team and how you're going to get work done in the class, switching gears. How are you going to design the company? Who's going to do it? You got 4 people. Imagine you have 4 people on your team. Who's going to help with the design of the company? Who's going to help with the estimate? Who's going to help with the implementation plan, the QA/QC plan, the safety plan, and so forth? And you're going to have to break this stuff down into tasks. So again, it's a supersection of the subsection you're going to do. You're planning to do your planning. That makes sense? So you're all going to have to do, build an estimate, build a schedule, and all this kind of thing. Well, if you keep it that broad, you're not going to get the steps done. You've got to break it down. Who's going to build the work breakdown structure? 2 of them. So you assign 2 people responsibility for that. 1 person primary responsibility. Then after you've got a work breakdown structure, which is all the components that are required to build the project. Your scope of work is the work breakdown structure. Then you've got to take off all those things. You've got to quantify each thing in the work breakdown structure, whether it's 1 each or 1 lump sum or 20,000 cubic yards of concrete. You've got to know. A work breakdown structure without quantities is kind of useless. And then you've got to figure out what each of those activities in the WBS is going to cost. So I'm sitting here giving you tasks, breaking down the estimate. Right? No different than those boxes with the arrows. And the responsibility matrix is just, these are all the things we've got to do as a team. In Hannon's class, BCG 400, this is who's going to do it. And you need to put when you're going to do it. So you work backward from the deadline and figure out when it's got to be done. And if you need to collaborate, you have to build in time for collaboration. Okay. So I'm going to let you, I'll put up in the, I'm going to put 2 things in this activities box tonight or in the morning. That'll be read a recommended practice about how to design this responsibility manual, and a resume. I want you to create a resume. Or dust off the one you have, tweak it up. The resume will really be quiz for this week. Okay. And then next week I'll give you a quiz on the recommended practice. I'll give you instructions on what to do, but hopefully it'll just be an upload. Does that make sense where we're headed? I've got to give the online students some time, 24 hours. release to catch up, because I just told them about resumes today. I need you to read that responsibility matrix. In this folder that says RAM, there's all kinds of links in there. Where'd it go? RAM. This is low UTS. But I've given you some things to look at, some more explanations and that kind of thing. The recommended practice isn't in there, but there's supporting material. RAM is responsibility assignment matrix. You have to make sure that everyone in your team knows what to do. That's going to take a few days for your team to figure out, which will probably take next week. Question? Is there a quiz this week? President? Which is 100 or 0? Okay?
There's a place that was.
No, there's only two grades, 100 or 0. No, I have not built that yet. So under this activities folder right here, I'll have, give me your resume, read the recommended practice, here it is. Or actually, you can download them all. I'll just say, read recommended practice, such and such. I think I've got them on here. I'll show up real quick and then we'll be done. You got any questions?
Yeah, you want that resume, PDF for it.
Good question. Probably either one. All right. 83R13 is the organizational breakdown structure in RAM. What did I say it was? 83 what? Okay, so here it defines an OBS, an RAM. A lot of what we've been talking about already. To give a little example of here's a responsibility assignment matrix. Your WBS will be tasks required to produce the deliverables in this class. Now, if you're a project manager on a project, you should have this stuff also. But I'm just talking about your team and the class deliverables, right? Not make-believe project deliverables at this point. Does that make sense? So I want everyone to kind of realize what their responsibilities are on your team. Remember, you could get fired. And if another team doesn't take you, then you have to do everything yourself. That's the rules. Don't be fired. And how do you not get fired? Everyone knows what the expectations are on your team. You can define it, doesn't take that much work. Other questions?
We subcontracting vendors out?
Yes, sir. Everyone has to self-perform the electrical work.
Oh, no, I quit.
You guys had 316 and 315, right?
No.
I would guess that those divisions of work will probably add a little bit of subcontract. Which means I gotta take it off to know what the subcontract is. Well, I might make you do it, part of it, but anyway. All right, have a good weekend. Check the site tomorrow or